Right, welcome ladies and gents. Matt Reeves has begun discussing the Batman Part 2 because, of course, the Penguin has ended. He's also discussing the possibility of the Penguin Season 2, but there's some really interesting stuff here, so I thought we'd do a pretty long, overarching video on multiple articles about all of this stuff because there's a lot of interesting tidbits from these interviews that have come out now, even down to Kristen Milioti talking about Selina, Carl and her potentially working together. So let's dive into it. Hit subscribe if you're new here and you enjoy videos like this. But let's take a look. So Matt Reeves talks about a scrapped Batman cameo and now does actually confirm that Season 2 has been discussed with respect to the Penguin. But then also, like I said, does discuss the Batman Part 2 as well. Because this series is obviously setting up the Batman Part 2. Like, we know that if you've watched it. So basically, he discusses the following with respect to a cameo that had been discussed and potentially sort of posited with respect to the Batman. It says, over the course of writing the season, we discussed many times whether or not there might be some cross-through that would feel earned. We tried a few different ideas conceptually, nothing that was ever written ultimately, but nothing seemed to quite gel in a way that felt earned. So apparently they were also thinking of the Batman turning up in front of Vic, Oz's right-hand man, which is an interesting concept, to be honest. So they say, but even that ended up throwing things off too much. We wanted our characters to be the predominant people that you're following in this show. Anything that started to detract from that wasn't servicing the type of show we wanted to do. And, you know, like, this kind of makes sense, to be honest. Like, when you throw in the Batman, like, everything kind of has to stop. And this, realistically, isn't actually set over a long period of time. It's set over a period of, I mean, what feels like weeks, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But anyway, they say this. So while the bat signal is as close to the Penguin gets to teasing Batman, LaFranc confirms it's there to, quote, to launch into Matt's second film. So this is literally the jump-off point to Batman Part 2. I very much like the idea of the Batman undercutting the strange delusional scenario that Oz created for himself at the end, to merit all of his previous actions and to say, I finally made it. But then for us to say, maybe not. Maybe you haven't. Love that. Love that. So Reeves chimed in and says, we're kind of flicking you at the end to say the story's not over. The idea that Oz and these characters could be on a collision course at some point with Batman, that's of course out there. So we wanted to leave you with a sense of that without overshadowing that this is really the completion of the story. I think that's amazing. I think that's brilliant. So they say this. The Penguin's been a critical ratings hit for HBO, which obviously means that they want to tell another story of Oz, probably. So Reeves admits that there's an urgency from HBO about his plans for the saga, and they confirm that Season 2 is not off the table. Quote, we are in very, very preliminary way discussing it all. Me, Lauren, Reeves, Dylan, and Colin, you know, Farrell, starting to talk about what that would be. For me, what's really important is that we earn it. The idea of revisiting means that we have to keep the same bar. I know that none of us wants to go back and just do more. We want to go back and do something great. And so in terms of how this sets up Batman Part 2, we're leaving Oz and Gotham in a state where the city is still trying to heal itself from what happened. It's also a time, as you see with what goes on with Vic and Crown Point, where the city's deeply wounded. As we're entering the movie, all of that stuff is still broiling. The repercussions of what happened as a result of the last movie and what's happened during this gang war are very much the table setter for the way we enter into the Batman Part 2. I think that's great. I think that's really, really good. So, yeah, I love that. I think that's brilliant. They say this, the movie doesn't arrive in theatres until October 2nd, 2026. Batman Part 2 has been set for an October 2025 release, but that was pushed back. Look, I love all of this. I think this is brilliant. they're almost going with like the city's a character, which I think is the best way to go. That's a great way to set up Batman Part 2. But wait, there's more. So Colin Farrell obviously confirmed the Batman Part 2 and 3. So he's signed up for 3 films, but also weighs in on the finale, which I think was quite interesting. So he says, the areas that are grey are the most interesting areas to operate from, and I think certainty is death sometimes. You might have a clear idea on what a scene is about, but the clearest way you should have in inhabiting a scene is how it may be played. The key word there is may. And by adding that word, you're still open to all the options that you might not have thought about, or that might be suggested to you, or might come up in the moment. So for sure, right after Oz's love for his mother was used against him and nearly brought him down, the idea of having somebody close enough that it would make him vulnerable is something he can't really truck with. And then he says, look, I signed up for 3 Batman films, but I didn't know if I'd be in the second film. Matt Reeves is a brilliant writer and an extraordinary filmmaker. And what I'm most excited / nervous about in the second film is not what Oz does, or what predicaments he finds himself in, or what moments of success he gets to experience, but what his voice is, how is his personality. It was forming and changing in the limited series, and by the end of the 8 episodes it's concretized into something else. There is a degree of almost delusion psychopathy present in the last scene. So how is that taken up in the second film? I was told I have 5 or 6 scenes. I don't have any hopes or any expectations. I'm really an open book, and that's the way I get excited by shit or not. I think sometimes actors, if they have a career that has a certain length of time, they sometimes get to make too many decisions, which isn't to say I won't push back or argue or fight in Oz's corner. I do believe I know him better than anyone now. I think that sounds great. But wait, there's more. So this stuff from Kristen Milioti was brilliant. And they say, this is interesting, they say about the end with Selina Kyle sending the letter. In the end, I did want to leave Sophia with a level of hope. I mean, our show is a tragedy, and her end, I think, should feel tragic. But when she receives the letter from Selina Kyle, you know, the fact that her entire arc in our show has been so much about how she doesn't feel a connection to her family, and how her family has betrayed her, and she has no one, and she feels all alone. At the end, we realise that she isn't completely alone, and that she actually does have family out there, that she doesn't know about. And maybe there could be some hope for a future connection. And then, yeah, Miliotti's brilliant. She's like, I mean, it's my wildest hope that I get to revisit her, because I've loved this role so immensely. It's like one of my favourite things I've ever gotten to do, and I'm just obsessed with her. And I think if Sophia and Selina were united, we would just really tear shit up. I don't know how to say it. We would just like burn it down. You know what I mean? In a fun way. I think we'd have a lot of fun. I think one of the standouts for me, Colin Farrell's brilliant, right? Colin Farrell's amazing. But one of the standouts to me has been Kristen Milioti. I think she's incredible as an actor. Like, genuinely, absolutely incredible. I would love to see her in this role on the big screen. Genuinely would love it. So there you go. A little bit more about the Batman Part 2, how the Penguin sets that up, and Penguin Season 2. I think that they will do it, genuinely. How can you not when this has been such a breakout success? How can you not? Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop it down below. Cheers, take care. Bye-bye now.